Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. In today's episode, why soft skills are the secret to workplace success, hosts Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman dive into an essential but often overlooked topic in the workplace: soft skills. Drawing inspiration from Bruce Tulgan's recent Forbes article, Why the Soft Skills Gap Continues to Damage Workplaces, they explore how these non-technical abilities play a critical role in team cohesion, leadership, and overall organizational success. Tim and Andreas discuss how workplace dynamics have evolved with remote work, gig economies, and trends like quiet quitting reshaping professional environments. These changes have made soft skills more important and more challenging to cultivate than ever before. They reflect on how leaders often struggle to bridge this gap, particularly when faced with diverse teams that bring different personalities, learning styles, and motivations to the table. If you're ready to rethink how you approach leadership and collaboration, stay tuned. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes filled with insights and strategies to stop doing stupid stuff in your workplace.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe with Transform CX and my co-conspirator and sometimes cellmate, Mr. Andreas Wieman. And we're here for another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. So, Mr. Andreas, sir, what is the topic du jour?
Yeah, no, thanks for the tee up. It's a topic you and I are both very, very deeply passionate about. In fact, we just have a new book that came out about the topic called Stop Doing Stupid Stuff.
Well,
Soft
who wrote that
skills.
book? Yeah.
I don't know, really handsome, articulate guy. You guys can go Google it and figure that out.
But definitely not me then.
So what we want to talk about today is obviously soft skills. And there was a really good article by Bruce Tulgan in Forbes called Why the Soft Skills Gap Continues to Damage Workplaces. And I think there's a lot of great points that he brought up that we address in the book. But I think it was good just to have a conversation around, what are the observations we're seeing in the gap that is being provided that I think is widening a bit. There's all kinds of research we can quote, but we don't have a ton of time. But there's a widening gap as you see new generations enter the workforce, right? And there's different learning styles, different norms that have kind of taken shape, and this overlap. There's just this widening of soft skills gap. And so we could record an hour podcast about this, but you and I, we're going to go down to we're going to keep it at 15 for everybody.
Well, and if you read the article, I mean, I think it's a really good, concise approach at the problem, right? And so as I think about it, and this is not a new problem, but it's become, I think, exacerbated over the last several years as people think, I think the pandemic, I think virtual work groups, more people working independently, a lot of people working multi-gig jobs, all of this stuff, quiet quitting. We find out that person is quiet quit so they can get their healthcare paid for by an employer, but they're actually working two side gigs, which is where they make their money and where their energy is, because that's what excites them, which is kind of terrifying. We probably should do one on healthcare, and the impact that it has on this type of stuff. But that idea of how do we bring in smart people, right? People with high IQ, and then who, by the way, are all different.
Right.
Some of them are, can be very quiet and very introverted and very difficult sometimes to communicate with, where others can be loud and brash and completely unwilling to, listen to anybody else, but they want everybody to listen to them.
And then hang on. I kind of felt like you were describing me there for a second.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about you as I was saying that, but no, actually, you're not quite that bad. But I mean, we've all been there. And then I think the challenge is, what's the glue to pull all that together? I mean, we, not to use too many sports analogies, because we do have a global market or a global audience, but, as we think about any organization, and let's go to team sports just for a second, because it's the role of the coach in a team, and think about that challenge and equate that to a work environment. So whether the sport is football, the global football that we call soccer in the United States, or it's American football, or whatever sport it is, the coach's job is not to be the best player. In fact, that's actually gets in the way, right? Yep. What they need to do is they need to know every position, and they need to know all of the technical skills that are required to play that position. That's almost the easy part.
Yep.
right? You just go out and you go, all right, who's the best striker, or who's the best wide receiver, or who's the best spiker in volleyball, right? And you recruit them. And some in professional, they pay a lot of money for these people.
Right.
That's almost the easiest part. Now I've got this bunch of egos, the humans, that now have to work together against a common goal. And that's why it's amazing sometimes when you see teams that become world champions one year, the same group of people a year later can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And as a
Well, no.
49er fan, and a former Mets fan, I've lived this in my life. But you're just like, what is the difference? And the difference is, sometimes people call it the X factor, or they call it intangibles, or they call it whatever. I think what you and I are saying, and what Bruce is saying as well, is that is the soft skills, the glue that takes these egos, these human beings that are who we are, right, and gets them to work together and create a benefit that's greater than the sum of the pieces.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the sports analogy is really relevant in the sense that that manager, that coach, they're there, yes, to assess the technical skills, but the technical skills, they get you on the team. And then obviously you have to
Mhm.
maintain the technical skills. But the really good coaches figure out, how do I motivate each position player to execute well enough in a fashion where, like the analogy you said, the sum of all the parts produces a enviable outcome that's going to produce a higher probability of success. And so how does that coach figure that out? That's soft skills. That's how the coach figures out individually for each human, how do we motivate them enough? And it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody likes to
Right.
take the, vanilla soft approach and say, oh, well, if I just do this often enough, then, half of the people will get it and they'll,
Well,
subsidize the other half of the people. That's lazy. In
it
my
is
opinion, that's a
lazy.
lazy.
Yeah, it is lazy, and it doesn't recognize the fact that every single, at least all human beings, seem to have different sets of motivation buttons, right? There's a great
Yeah.
book, 1 Minute Manager, has been around forever, and it's like a book that fits in your back pocket. Those people still have back pockets, I guess. But the point of that book was that people are different and what motivates them. And as somebody who had some military experience earlier in my career, and in shipboard environments where things are pretty structured, right? And this is a very kind of strange thing to think about, that 22 or 23 years old, somebody on a merchant ship, you actually have to take the license that gives you the authority to do your job, and it has to be posted in the wheelhouse of the ship by law. Right. And that's true for engineering officers as well as the deck officers. So you're in this situation where your mandate to a successful outcome, right, which could be completing a watch without blowing up or running into another ship or running aground, which that's a pretty good success story by itself. But then you also have people that work for you that at the end of the day, you're legally responsible for whether they did their job or not. It's kind of interesting. And then you're trying to
Yeah.
take that into like our company. I come away from every weekend, sometimes going, the challenges of what we're trying to do here at Transform CX. And I don't want to turn this into a salesy thing at all, but rather saying we have the same, interesting dynamic. We have incredibly smart people that every day I'm thankful for that I get to work with, but we're all different. And it's funny because, we'll come away from a conference call or a call, and maybe there was a hot topic, or maybe I stirred some stuff up, and, I'll get 3 or 4 text messages from different people who were on that call, and they all have different viewpoint about what went well or didn't go well on that
Right.
call. And you're like, wouldn't it be nice if I could just say, oh, we're going to do X, everybody will be happy. And that's just not the way it is, but
No.
at the same time, that's not what I want either, right? Like, we
Right.
don't need yes people, but we also need people that, I think you talk about this, and I think this is why we connect. It's perfectly okay to push back. In fact, it's beyond perfectly okay. It is a mandate that if you have the data and if your experience tells you that we should reconsider or question or relook at something, you should bring it up. If you're
Yeah.
not doing that, then why are you there?
Well,
And
it's like a
anyway.
thread though. It's like a thread that you pull of say, okay, well, do you feel comfortable to bring that up? And I think a lot of people listening and their employees and organizations, they won't for whatever reason. And so I think it's a thread that if you pull organizationally, you make big culture change by addressing the problem.
Yep.
And you can't hire around the problem. Bruce does a really good job of outlining this. You don't hire around the problem because if you try to hire around the problem, frankly, you're going to run out of resources that you need that are qualified enough on the technical skill side. If you only hire for just the soft skills, you got to find that balance.
Absolutely.
And then
Yep.
what can you do to incorporate, I would say habits, but routines in organizational culture that allows for a balance between the technical and the soft skills at every level of the organization, not just your frontline workers you're hiring for, because quite frankly, some of the worst offenders I've seen are more senior executives.
Oh, I think it's the C-suite
Yep.
is because, and everything that happens in your leadership team level or your C-suite, whatever you want to call it, it becomes replicated throughout the organization. I
Yep.
mean, been around a little bit, right? And if you have, like, say, for example, a head of engineering, and I lived this for a while back in the days when I worked for the phone company, where we were building out a network, state of the art, really cool stuff. And the engineering head, and I had operations and he had engineering. So his job was to build it, test it, and then they would turn it over to operations for production. And then, of course, our goal was all about availability, for the customers. So the customers were paying to use the service on our network. And then what was happening was in the middle of the day, we would see like a node go off the air. And we'd be like, we have an outage. So we're
Right.
going to, condition, red, P0, whatever terminology you want to use. And then one time we got an alert that these were these cabinets out in neighborhoods. We see them more and more nowadays, but they were pretty rare when we were doing it. And we saw the doors open. There was an alarm on the door. I was like, holy crap, we're having vandalism on one of our devices. So we called the cops because that's what our protocol was. Like,
Right.
we don't have police. We're going to call Anaheim police and they're going to go out and investigate if there's well, they get out there and there's the engineering guys going, oh, well, we were just going in to do XYZ. And I'm like, hey guys. And so the engineering head and we would just get into these huge Donnybrooks in front of the other executives because we were being held accountable for this. The problem
Right.
was we were not aligned on a common goal. And I think it was, so his name was Dennis. I went to him and I said, Dennis, we got to figure this out because this isn't working. And how about this? Every Tuesday, you and I have lunch. No agenda. Let's just have lunch. And it was amazing because first off, we both realized that we're not the asshole that we thought we were. Or, well, he was less of an asshole than I thought he was. I don't know what he felt about me. But what happened was we started to realize that it wasn't so much that we were wrong, is that we were getting conflicting direction from our bosses and who
Right.
were going at each other. And so it was interesting. I mean, when it was able to pull it all together. But the point I guess I'm trying to get at is when you have people that at senior levels are acting in a way, and you may think that nobody realizes or they don't see it, everybody sees it. And then your team members will start to replicate or
Emulate
reflect
it.
or echo your behavior because that's what they think you want. And I think it's really, really important as we get into the soft skills stuff. And I know we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but soft skills is not a secondary skill. In fact, I would argue in many cases that true leadership, true success is going to be tied to people who are excellent at bringing high IQ people together to create a common goal and deliver on that goal.
Yeah.
That I think is, it's the evolution of EQ versus IQ, and it's the balance. That's why we talk
Yeah.
about, balancing things that are really important in what we're trying to do.
100% agree. And I think in closing, right, to wrap it, in the article, right, by that
Bruce.
Bruce wrote in Forbes, he kind of talks at the end about you can't just rely on like self-identification, especially from people managers, right? Or especially frontline people managers, which you and I are intimately familiar with, to really fix it. They don't have the training, they don't have the resources, the tools, the time in a lot of cases because they're kind of focused on the bigger picture of the company outcome, right? The technical skills that are required. No one says, "Hey, Tim, I need you before I hire you, I need you to take the soft skills test." All right. Some people may have like an active listening test, which I think is the simplest point from a soft skill perspective, but there's not really ongoing education and resources and training, I think, around soft skills. And I think a lot of it is because people really don't know what soft skills are, to be
Well,
completely
uh,
transparent. I don't think they know what soft skills are.
well, they sure don't know how to measure them, right? Like I can go to
Right.
an engineer and say, write some code for me, and then I can evaluate, how well that was written against what standards and what languages they used. That's fine. It's like, okay. Or I can go ask a field goal kicker to kick 5 field goals. And how did he do?
Right.
When it comes to, but how do I hire a coach, right? To your point, where, wow, like and to me, I think that the real, unfortunately, it's kind of an output thing because, we could look at things like there's a ton of psychological instruments. I mean, Myers-Briggs
Right.
is the famous one that we've all been through that can give you some understanding, I guess, of where you might fit in, the spectrum. But I don't think the book's been written yet on, how you would say to somebody, this is a person who can take a complex group of people and make them work together to a common goal. And it's not as simple as just saying, I'm the boss, you have to do what I say I do. In fact, that will, depending on the skill
Work
sets of the
against
people,
you.
they will walk right the freak out the door. Or even worse, they
Yep.
fall into a passive aggressive sabotage behavior, which
Yep.
is what happens in the military all the time, which is, yes, sir, no, sir, 2 bags full, sir. And then they go and do everything they can and the next thing you know, somebody's rolling a hand grenade into your tent. And literally that's what was happening
Yep.
because, you are disrespecting people. You're imposing something on them that is by definition just going to break who they are and break what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I mean, we
Anyway,
saw that with the quiet quitting. I mean, that's
oh,
exactly what was happening with the quiet quitting. It's still
yeah, well,
happening, by the way.
I think it's even worse now because it's quiet
Yep.
quitting plus a side hustle. It's like, hey,
Exactly.
I'm here for the health benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation like that last night at dinner. I mean, I was talking to a couple of young people. They were like, yeah, I work for this company because I get my health benefits there. I put in 40 hours a week. I literally punch a time card. And then I spend my weekends doing these 3 things that I love doing. And I make 3 times as much money doing that.
Yeah.
But I
Yep.
don't have health care. So that's what I got to do. Anyway, great topic. I think Bruce has got something here, and I, love maybe we can get him on as a guest. That would be awesome. But I think this whole area requires a lot of like attention, and I think it's the hard attention of senior leaders being able to hold up a mirror to themselves and really be able to say, what am I looking at? We've got some great people that we work with, Diana Chu and others that have are in the organizational psychology space. And, how do we work with them to help operationalize some of these
Right.
things that I think are becoming critical right now?
No, agreed. And I think it starts at the highest level, C-suites of recognizing it and saying, yes, we've got to figure out how do we enable people to have soft skill development. And I think it's going to start with, and it's not easy, to your point earlier, it's not a one size fits all. It's not a checklist. And that's another point that Bruce brought up is you try to checklist everything. You can't checklist it when it comes to humans and the amount of variation that each human brings. And like you were saying earlier, I think we celebrate that. We don't look at it as, oh man, I got to work with 20 different people. No, I get to work with 20 different people with 20 different unique perspectives. And what can and your role as a leader is figuring out how do you make all of it symbiotic, cohesive to drive success. That I think is the Nevada state that we got to get to, but it's never going to be a checklist because you have so many different people, personalities, and experiences. How do you pull the best out of everyone and motivate everyone to be able to do that? That's what I think soft skills are. However, we can close with I'll read the definition that I put in the book for what are soft skills. The soft skills are the non-technical abilities that let you interact with others without derailing conversations, manage time and resources without losing your mind, and adapt to new situations without a meltdown. They're essential for building strong connections, hitting your goals, and gracefully navigating the delightful chaos of modern life.
I,
Feel free
I
to
like the
disagree with
chaos
me.
word. I'm not sure about delightful, but I appreciate the chaos word. Absolutely.
Yep, agreed.
All
Awesome.
right.
Well,
All right. Well,
great.
thanks again.
Yeah.
And hopefully, everybody, if you have the opportunity, please subscribe. We're interested in comments. If you've got a strong opinion about some of these things and you feel like you'd like to engage with us in a conversation publicly, we'd be happy to have you on the podcast at some point. Anyway, thanks again for spending a few minutes with Andreas and I. It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to having one next week.
Yep. Agreed. Thanks, everybody. Take care.